All right, so we got a budget small block Ford. Was a 302. It's bored 30 over. It'll be a 306 when it's done. It's a roller block out of an SN95, so 94, 95. It's a supercharged engine. He knows the limits. We all know the mythical 500 horsepower. The blocks turn into spaghetti, except, you know, when you make 680 horsepower, and they don't. But anyway, it is a lightweight block. They're not really good. Now, we finally got it back from the machine shop. First thing I always like to do is take and chase every bolt hole on it. Because when I went to put it on here, the bell housing bolt holes were full of rust and debris. The machine shop, you know, must not have taken the time to clean them out. I hate to say it, the guy's a nice guy, but a little bit more attention to detail would be nice. Second thing you always do is, and he did do this nicely, was you have to make sure, even on a factory engine, there's a bigger chamfer and a smaller chamfer on the rods. So you want the bigger chamfer to face the crankshaft. So that's if they have a fillet on them, you know, that way the bearings don't rub the crank and this doesn't rub the crank. Now I checked that and he has that good. Now I did measure them. The pistons are 4027 roughly, and they're wanting about 4 thou. That's the minimum clearance. Turbo and nitrous may require extra. The compression height and everything like that. So there's telling you, you measure at the lowest part of the piston skirt or 1/300 from the bottom of the oil ring. So that's easy enough to check. I measured each piston just to make sure as a sanity check. Now, what I like to do is, I always tell you guys, you should technically have a gauge setting fixture. I just set them off a micrometer. So I took one of our measurements off the smallest piston. You want to check each bore. But so it was 4027, 3, and then you're going to set your gauge, and you want it to be roughly at 0, which we are. Now, same thing as holding these. They all have a point where you're supposed to hold them. The longer you hold them in your hand, you can change the measurement. So what I like to do is, and I'll come over here. So we're set at 0. I like to check at the top. It looks like 4.5. Middle, right about there, and the bottom. Now and then you go your 90s. So there's a little bit more variation than I'm typically happy with, but it's a couple tenths. It won't be the end of the world. Yeah. So either the block moved on him or he was honing it hot, and once it cooled, some of the dimensions changed a little bit. Again, it's only a few tenths for what we're doing. It will be fine, but it's just something to keep an eye on. I had already measured this and I knew that, but that's just something you want to check. So I like to lay them out all like this. Now, this is a Wiseco piston kit. Usually they do give you what they want the rings gapped at. If not, you know your ring material and stuff like that, you can look it up. Now, I don't believe that these were file fit rings. We're just going to use a regular King SI bearing. Same with the rods. For what this is doing, it's fine. I like to use the TrickFlow MLS gaskets because they're designed to fit every type of cylinder head. I've had great luck with them. We're also going to go with our favorite Summit Motorsports 8902. Still, the Pro LS cracks me up every time. Small block Ford, but they say Pro LS. Come on, Summit, get on this. I already had him order different push rods because the ones he had in there were not correct. I also had him pick up some gaskets. These are just your 1250s. They were supposed to be the S3. They are not. So the S3 is a steel core. I'm not real happy about that. He was missing these. Some guys say they're not necessary. They're a head bolt bushing because the heads come drilled. Most aftermarket heads come drilled for a 1/2-inch stud instead of 7/16. I like to have these in here. And every time with a small block Ford, I always recommend a hardened oil pump drive shaft. 100%. That's the biggest failure I see in a small block Ford is the drive shaft. You know, you look and they're twisted up like a barber's pole. You don't need, the only thing I like to run sometimes is a high pressure pump. You do not need high volume unless you have clearances that are just way out there. Now the other thing to check, and what he did, even the crosshatch angle is a little shallower than I'd like to see. Again, it will be fine, but that's a little bit shallower than I would like to see. Now, what you have to watch for is, so he has a windage tray in here, and these studs, depending on torque, like to change they'll change the bearings bores sometimes and put them out of round. I mean, not that, you know, after 20, 30 years, they were still the most round thing in the world, but it's always something you want to check your main bearing bores, because if they close up the clearance and you start eating up bearings, the first question you should ask yourself was, what was the clearance? What didn't work? I do like that he did aviation seal the freeze plugs. What I do, unfortunately they're a shallow cup. I'm not really a big fan of the shallow cup design. I prefer a thicker cup, especially with solid mounts. I've seen them actually flex the block hard enough to push these cups out. What I prefer to do is put in threaded freeze plugs, which Ford Racing actually still offers a kit. But what you'll need to do is you'll need to buy 2 taps. One to start it, because it comes against the bore, and then I cut one off a little bit up so you could use it as a bottoming tap and make your own bottoming tap. So that's a pro tip, I guess. Now, the nice part about Fords is they number them. It's 1 forward. The bearing caps, the tangs match. This block was gently used, and I mean gently. There's no fretting. You know, it's not about to be gently used, but there was none of that. So sometimes you'll get where you're gonna, especially with a stud, you have to tap them to get them to come loose. And this is gonna be the long version. So the way my schedule's been with kids, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, it's just busy. So let's take this off before I shoot things into the atmosphere. So boy, is that going to make this camera shake all over the place. You guys are going to have to forgive me on that. One thing I noticed is Pete forgot the rear main seal. That's okay. They can install that later. I prefer to put them on before, but they can install them later. There. So we get our main caps out. We're going to clean all this up. That's a little dirtier than I like to see. Always, guys, write down your measurements too, so you know you have something to kind of come back to. Like I said, these guys aren't customers. I do this as a hobby, you know, to help my friends out. And I've said before, I do it kind of as a trade deal. Yeah, see, I don't like. So we're gonna go through and clean this block a little bit better, blow it out, everything like that, because I'm not really happy with that. But I think he coated it in WD-40, but if you see this, that's not the way it should be. Now, I always like to go through and check. I didn't install the cam bearings, so they get their oiling from the mains right here. you'll see. So you have an oil passage, and then you'll have one oil passage, and it comes around in an oils. So all you have to do is look through and see that each bearing is lined up with the oil passage, and that looks good. You know, some people will try to deburr them or enlarge them. I've never seen a need for that. I don't see that. You know, you can look through. So as always, you know, the filtered oil comes through the center. So that's gonna be, you know, here's the outside comes in from your oil pump, comes out, goes through the center of the oil filter. So there are some stains in this block. I had discussed that with him. This block had sat, and it looked like somebody roughly hand honed it before at some point in their life. So we're kind of saving it for what he's doing. It won't be a 200,000 mile motor. It's going to be something for him. The car has sat for so long. We're just getting it together. Now, this is a case of doing the wrong thing the right way. We had everything balanced. We had everything taken care of. But, you know, if it was going to be a high-end motor, I would prefer it done a little differently. We would not be using stock rods and stock fasteners. Again, they're not going to be the limiting factor of this block. So we're good with that. But Fords use a tiny 5/16 bolt, and it's only like 20 or 24 foot-pound of torque. Don't go over that. Use oil. I've heard of people Loctiting them. So ring gaps, I like to leave the second ring a little bigger than the top ring to help, especially on a boosted motor. It helps reduce ring flutter and helps keep the upper ring sealed. These are a heavy piston. They're pressed in. They're just a budget deal. The ringland is really thick. The ring package is a thicker package. It's gonna work for him. It's gonna leave a long life, leave room for some tuning issues, you know. It's just the better way to go for him. So we'll check them. I don't believe these were a file fit, so we'll see where they come in at first, and then we'll go from there. It isn't often that I don't have to file a ring to get something where I wanted it to, but who knows? We might get lucky. So just for that, and you can see ADD and OCD are just not a great mix. Everything has to have its place and has to go back where it fits. So, my boss messaging me. So I like to take the top ring groove, second ring groove, and get your feeler gauges. And we'll take our top ring groove. Our top ring, sorry, I'm all flustered now because of that message. And it has a dot that faces up. You can see there's an inner bevel. So put them together, put them down in the bore, take your piston. I like to use the ledges of the piston. And we'll see where it is. So let's start at 19. Looks tighter than 19. So we're gonna have to file fit these rings. Let's go down to 16. Tighter than 16, way too tight. 13, nope. Let's go down to 10. Not even 10 thou. So that's why you need to check this every time. These rings are too tight, so they will have to be file fit. I've showed file fitting rings before on my videos, and I'm not gonna bore you guys to death with me grinding these rings. I'll bring you guys back once that's done. We move on to something else. All right, boys, we got our rings all file fit. We decided on a 24 thou gap top, 28 thou gaps on the bottom. So I'm giving this thing a little bit of room to breathe. Nothing serious. A lot of people keep getting on me about having a proper ring installer. This is what I use. Like I said before, I build a lot of engines and a lot of different varieties, flavors, stuff like that. So, you know, for me to own dedicated sizes just doesn't really work for me, and I'm not really that concerned about it. I'm just really not. This works. It always has worked, always probably will work. As long as you're careful, it's just not a problem. Sounded like something big backing in. We got a visitor? Sounds like something heavy. Oh, FedEx. It's always Christmas when the delivery guy comes. That guy was hard on the pedal. So we just use regular King bearings on this. Same thing. They work. Always give them a look over before you put them in. Yeah. The packaging though, they used to come in nice little trays and be separated. Now they kind of smash them all together. Sometimes you get some marks in them. I've seen a lot of people complaining. The marks, as long as they don't stick out, they really don't hurt anything. What I would do though is give these things a wipe with a lint-free towel, because see, there's a little bit of dirt on them. So wipe them off. Now, is it the end of the world that they're not the cleanest? No, but it's nicer to keep them clean. I like to use Lubriplate on the bearings as something that's gonna sit for a minute. And knowing this customer, this engine might sit for a while. So, you know, it's one of those cases of, you try to make it work for them. Yeah, thing sounds heavy. And then on the rings, everybody's got their own thing. I tend to just use a little bit of Rotella on them. I used to use just like transmission fluid or something, but I found Rotella works just as well. I should have checked that. They actually tighten those up. That one's not, that one is a little bit. That one's not, that one's not. I did have these rods checked for sizing. They're okay. They're not, again, nothing in this build is perfect, but everything will work and function. Let's get a extension on that too. Makes me happier when we're tightening them from underneath. All right, so we got our numbers right. We got our number 1. You got your valves. You see the cheek of the crank. That's good. You see your rings. You don't want the gaps to line up. So you got your dots. You know they're facing forward or up. You got this. What I like to do now, load my bearings into the upper and lower. Some small block Ford bearings have an oil hole that, you know, that squirts on the cylinder walls. These don't. So what a lot of aftermarket bearing manufacturers like to do is, instead of chamfering the bearing, which is an extra machining operation, they can just make the bearing narrower. Sometimes you'll see they're marked upper and lower. These are just standard bearings, they're just not marked upper and lower. So that's no big deal. What I do like to do is put a little bit of lubric plate on it. Don't lube the back of the bearings. I saw a video somewhere somebody did that. That's not a thing. They're supposed to be clean and dry. Some people like to dunk the pistons in oil. I don't do that. I just give the skirt a nice coat. Give the rings a nice coat. Move them around so it works it in. Give the piston pin a little bit. And remember, all this extra oil will run out, but you want something in there. There we go. Smooth that out a little bit. Take your handy dandy rag, take your piston installer, now would it be nicer to have one of the fancy ones? Probably, as he pinches his finger. I used to have a nice one that I loaned out, never got back. It was a multi-fit everything, and you know, typical. I loaned it out, never got it back. When I asked for it back, it had disappeared. So, you know how it is. You don't loan out two things, your tools or your wife or girlfriend. I like to put that down. We got our bearing in, we got our thing in. Boom. Guide it down. Take your rod. You know that the big end with the chamfer goes this way. You also know that and it's going to be hard to show you guys, but the tang lines up. So that tang moved a little bit. Sometimes I do that. You want to make sure it's straight when you push it in. There you go. Now, your tang's lined up, the cap's lined up. Put your rod on. Tighten her down. That's interesting. So this is the first time I've ran into that, where the rod, the chamfer on the rod is not, if your socket's going down too deep, it goes down and hits. I like to give them a spin over as I install each one. Go see why my work phone's blowing up. This thing does not stop. Editor, cut this out. Oh, one of my work buddies sending me information on a job. Now's a good time to be a mechanic, actually. So when I was growing up, it wasn't a great time to be a mechanic, and you know, it wasn't, you didn't have a lot of people that were rushing out to do it. Now it seems like, you know, in this area you can kind of command what pay rate you want, especially if you're a field tech. Just random. Man, sometimes these rods do get stuck. Drop forged. Editor, cut that one out too. Now, there is no orientation where these tangs gotta fit. I saw there is still arguments online about which way they have to face. There is no which way they have to face. And the only thing that matters is the chamfer of the rod, if they have one. Not every engine has one. Some do. Some don't. Give your skirts some nice lubrication. Love them up a little bit. Make sure your rings spin around. Put your installer on there. Don't. Make sure you give yourself plenty of room. And with this style, you don't have to go crazy. I literally just snug them up, back them off like half a turn. Take your favorite implement of destruction, give them a little, make sure it's lined up straight. Yell at your machinist for not cutting the chamfer better on the top of the bore. Go down, make sure that's lined up, that's lined up. So you see the bearing tang? I'm not 100% happy with that fit. So my feeling is these rods have been resized, and sometimes when they get resized, you need to watch the way the holes go, because it brings them out closer to the inside or the edge and makes it not a happy experience. So just snug her down. Give her a, give her some love. Keep moving on, keep keeping on. Won't make the same mistake again. We only do it once. says he never has problems with it, and there we go. I wouldn't have problems with it had the machinist chamfered it. Typically this guy does good work, but he must be getting busy or something, because this isn't usually what I expect to see from him. There's almost no chamfer on the bores. It's not the cleanest work I've ever seen from him, but I mean, the measurements are okay. It's you know, and it's funny, this being a 94, 95 engine, the rods are cast 71, so Ford did not throw any parts away when they were building these small block Fords. They used the same casting forever. Now, usually you can just take these and almost slide them in by hand, but like I said, due to the fact that there isn't a good chamfer on the top of the bores, it's gonna fight you a minute. It's not the end of the world, but it's just not, just ain't cool. Yeah, see? And if something doesn't go, stop. Don't force it, or you end up folding up a ring, or even worse. I know some guys that have hammered them in the past, and it's, you tear it down and the ring was folded. If he's watching, he knows who he is. If he's watching, he definitely knows who he is. I said, they usually just slide together, but with me having to hit the piston a little bit harder, they're not happy. Nothing affects its function. Why is this not? Me and this guy are gonna have a heart-to-heart. Show everything or don't show it at all. And I'll show it all. That, boys, that's the result of them not following a good chamfer on it. It's just not wanting to go in well. If you had a decent chamfer on the top, it would go in well. I don't want to badmouth the guy, I don't want to blast the guy, but you have a job. You do it right or you don't do it at all. And this is a case of you didn't do it right. Everybody makes mistakes. Maybe he had some new shop help, I don't know, but I'm not happy about that. Because honestly, they should slide right in, especially being, you know, something this loose. And I'm telling you right now, they ain't sliding. The block isn't as clean. Every time I touch the outside of the block, I'm getting black crusty paint on it, which honestly I should have cleaned a little better. I blew it off, but every time I touch it, more and more comes off. And I was bitching and whining is what I'm doing. You always tell when somebody has an 8 in a minute, especially as you age, you get the shakes a little bit worse than. I should have ate some breakfast this morning. Energy drinks are not breakfast. Yep, just it's gonna fight the entire way because no chamfer. Don't like it. No bueno. Yep. Same as the last one. Kids don't do this at home. No bueno. That's not the right way. Will it work? Yeah. Would I tell anyone else to do it? Nope. See all this sweat from the horsepower this thing's gonna make? He did do a nice job balancing him though. I can see where he was writing down the balancing. He did send me the balance card, stuff like that. Like I said, typically this guy seems pretty on it. It's just a few things, and maybe he just forgot a step, or maybe he had a bad day. Maybe his boss called him on the phone while he was working. Maybe his wife called him. Maybe his kid got in a fight at school. Last one. This is when you sing hallelujah. Let's see if this one doesn't fight me. Come on, go in. Oh, are you gonna go? There you go. That's a girl. She went in that time. So an interesting thing on Fords, because of the firing order, 1 and 6 are typically at TDC at the same time. 1 and 6. So that's just something to interesting to note. Man. Not happy about that. Look, even the dirt coming off the cylinder walls. I might tear this thing back apart and clean everything. This is kind of unacceptable. I was wanting to get it together for the guy, but you can't let a bad job go. I mean, it shouldn't be this dirty. This is unacceptable. See how bad the lifter bores are. Yeah, look at this. So, not everything's a home run. I'm gonna tear this apart and clean out everything. This is just unacceptable. I'm not happy about it. I should have cleaned it better to begin with. That's on me. I shouldn't trust anyone to do their work. Sorry, guys. I'm not real happy about it because that's a couple hours worth of work wasted. You could put it together like this, but the problem is, if you have an issue with it, you know, that's your work. You let go out the door. And even if you're not getting paid for it, you shouldn't let it go like this.